Thanking Fred Tauber for conferring my degree. Fred is a great scholar and a longtime friend. And I also note with pride that he was a trustee of Tufts University during my time there as president. Thanks also to Ron Rubin, my esteemed presidential colleague, and to Brad Bloom, a distinguished and active Harvard alum, and to Jay and Shira Rudderman for making this moment possible. I also want to thank Professor Deborah Shmueli, my former student from my MIT days, for the conversation that will follow this talk. I'm deeply grateful that all of our lives have intersected in so many wonderful ways over so many years. Your partnership, your friendship have been a gift to me. Thank you very, very much.
And now, without further ado, I'm pleased to invite Professor Larry Bacow to speak with us about tireless pursuits, the research university in the age of COVID, followed by a Q&A session moderated by our own Professor Deborah Shmueli. Professor Bacow, the floor is yours.
Symbols have been on my mind since I read last month of your joint discovery of what is likely the world's oldest known engraving. 120,000 years is in many ways unfathomable. But it does tell us something important about the urge to communicate. Zoom is as ancient as it is modern, and I'm grateful for this technology that lets us all share in this moment today. However, it goes without saying that I wish all of us could be together in Eretz Yisrael. I must say that my wife Adele and I were so looking forward to coming back to Israel for this event. In 1981, 40 years ago this year, which I can scarcely believe, we spent 6 wonderful years on my very first sabbatical at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. That experience was my first encounter with a wonderful tradition, at least in Jerusalem in the summer of Hafsakah. It was truly a revelation to have a moment at midday for relaxation and renewal, a moment to consider life not in retrospect or in prospect, but as I was actually living it. I actually tried my best to popularize the practice in the United States, first pitching it at MIT when I returned, and then at Tufts, and more recently at Harvard. But as we all know, change comes slowly to higher education. Now that I'm an official alum of the University of Haifa, with all the rights and privileges, you may well run into me at one of your campuses in the near future, I hope. In the meantime, memories of our sabbatical, our wonderful time in Israel, as well as our subsequent trips, including lots of mementos in this house, the president's residence at Harvard, will have to suffice. If I can't be in Haifa, Boston is truly the next best place to be. Your city and my own have deep and very special ties. The combined Jewish philanthropies, the Boston-Haifa connection, Brad Bloom, Fred Tauber, Shira and Jay Rudderman. We're incredibly fortunate to be connected in so many ways and through the work of so many extraordinary people. This gathering is a celebration of those long-standing ties. On a personal level, in 2005, when I was president of Tufts, I had the privilege of working together with your then president, Aharon Ben-Zev, to help create the Talwar network of engaged universities. Originally, there were 26 institutions from around the world that agreed to work together to promote the social and civic responsibilities of higher education. Now there are more than 400 institutions that belong to the Towar network. Tufts and the University of Haifa, I'm proud to say, were founding members. Reminding ourselves of goodness is one of the most important things that we can do to maintain hope. It's hard to imagine that more than a year has passed since President Rubin met with me in my office here at Harvard to extend this invitation in person. I was thrilled to hear Ron describe his ambitious plans to create an inclusive multi-university to help realize what he refers to as the Israeli dream. He has called your university a crystal ball and said, and I quote, "If you want to gaze and see what the future of this country is going to look like, look to our university." Last February, I was growing eager to see your progress in person. Then the coronavirus started spreading rapidly. Then it reached America. Then it reached Massachusetts. We made the difficult decision to send our students home to finish the semester online. And on March 13th, 1 year and 2 days ago, I left my office in Harvard Yard and have been working remotely ever since. None of us could have predicted what has happened since. In Israel, more than 5,600 people have died. In the United States, more than 500,000 people have died. A grim milestone passed just last month. In the US, it feels as if everyone, all of us, knows someone who has lost a loved one to this disease. And family and friends are often made to grieve alone, deprived even of the few precious comforts that customary ways of mourning afford us. Heartbreak shadows every day. Alongside this immeasurable grief and loss, we continue to contend with gross inequalities and deep injustices that have been laid bare by this disease and exacerbated by bitter and combative politics. I need not recount to you the events of January 6th in my country and in our capital. The divisions that were made plain for our nation and to the world still threaten the underpinnings of our democracy. And that's to say nothing of the particular challenges facing higher education. Colleges and universities across the United States have cut 650,000 jobs in the last year. That's about 1 in 10 jobs in the entire higher education sector. Institutions continue to struggle with fulfilling their mission in the face of upheaval and uncertainty, and some of them may not survive these difficult months and years ahead. Despite it all, however, I remain optimistic because one aspect of the research university that has become clearer to me in the last year than it has ever been in my academic career, and that is, where else is failure embraced so widely and resilience valued so highly? Let me say a bit more about this. Scholarship and research demand an unfailing willingness to charge down dark alleys. Faculty are innately curious. They have big ideas, big hypotheses which they seek to test. They pursue these ideas in laboratories and libraries, on digs and in archives. Rarely do things work the first time. Experiments have to be redone, theories revised and reevaluated. The work of discovery and innovation requires persistence, requires dedication, curiosity, and creativity. Sometimes these efforts lead us in directions that never could have been predicted, and society is in the end far better off for it. These tireless pursuits have yielded over generations, in fact, over centuries, the improvement and enrichment of humanity. They have given people around the world reason to hope for a deeper understanding, for greater knowledge, for better days ahead, for all of us and for all those who will follow us and take up the task of tikkun olam, of repairing the world. For the past year, I've watched with awe as members of our university community and research universities around the world who've worked literally around the clock to meet the challenges of this pandemic, to speed progress towards a future in which all of us are free in ways that, let's face it, we all once took for granted. At Harvard, people working on the front lines with patients in our affiliated hospitals and through research on the virus itself are changing the landscapes of medicine and science as the pandemic continues to evolve. Strong connections with our neighboring institutions have created unprecedented opportunities for collaboration in Boston. The Massachusetts Consortium on Pathogen Readiness, or Mass CPR as we call it, has connected and supported scientists and clinicians from Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Tufts University, the University of Massachusetts, as well as local biomedical research institutes, biotech companies, pharma, and academic medical centers. At the same time, researchers across the university are seeking to understand how humanity is responding to and coping with this disease, from newborn infants to the elderly and everyone in between, and making all of our lives, I hope, better in the process. Through it all, I have marveled at the perennial wisdom of supporting discovery, of continuing to ensure that questions are asked and answered for their own sake. I'm proud to say that 2 of the coronavirus vaccines currently in use, the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines, have their origins in Harvard Medical School laboratories. The Moderna vaccine and a number of others now in use rely on messenger RNA to trigger an immune response and produce antibodies to fight the virus. The possibility of this mechanism began with basic research at a number of institutions around the world. But in the 1970s at MIT, Professor Philip Sharp and his colleagues were at the MIT Cancer Center were trying to figure out if cancers were caused by viruses, something that we now know is quite rare. They ended up discovering along the way the process of RNA splicing, a feat that ultimately resulted in a Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1993 for Phil Sharp and colleagues. It was that discovery that made possible the mRNA vaccines that are now in production today, and to do so in record time, in less than a year from start to finish. There's a lesson here, and the lesson is that fundamental curiosity-based discovery over 40 years later is now helping us to save humanity from the scourge of this disease. Other routes from idea to innovation are often more circuitous. If I can offer a lighter example closer to home for all of my friends in Israel. Consider Waze, the popular GPS traffic app that helps us all find how to get to where we want to go in the minimum amount of time. Today, it connects millions of people. What made such an innovation possible? Waze would not exist without GPS, and GPS would not exist with atomic clocks. It's actually our ability to measure time extraordinarily precisely that it allows us to determine the location of any point on the planet within a meter. And atomic clocks would not exist without Professor Norman Ramsey. In 1949, while a member of the Harvard faculty, Professor Ramsey developed the hydrogen maser, which made atomic timekeeping possible. In 1989, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. But it wasn't the promise of a prize or the founding of a company that would ultimately develop an app, something that was unknown in 1949, which motivated him as a young man. Far from it. Ramsey recalled that, in his words, when he learned that he could make a living studying how nature operates, he knew that was what he wanted to do. Right now, people at Harvard and at the University of Haifa, people around the world at institutions like ours, are being given a chance to follow their curiosity, just like Philip Sharp, just like Norman Ramsey. Not to reach some known 0.5 or 10 years hence, but to satisfy the deep urge to know and to understand, to expand and to deepen, to seek and to find. This is what scholarship ultimately is all about. The partnerships that exist between our two institutions in archaeology, education, environmental studies, and other areas have expanded the frontiers of knowledge. And our newest collaboration on the etiology of large marine mammals may change what we know about some of the most extraordinary animals on the planet. Research universities help us to figure out where we want to go, but more importantly, they help us to figure out why we actually want to get there. In the years to come, as we continue to face the challenges posed by climate change and inequality, we will see more and more the convergence of science and technology with philosophy and ethics and the humanities more broadly, creating spaces for the full consideration of what we in the present, what we here and now owe to those who will come in the future. Scholarship out of the University of Haifa just this last month on the failure of AI-designated algorithms to detect coded anti-Semitic language, in some cases simple word swaps, is a powerful example. Social media shapes opinions and perspectives around the world. Innovations created by people are works in progress, and our institutions can and should play a role in understanding how people can influence their beliefs and actions. Overcoming hate depends on what we do, not only with our hearts, but also what we do with our heads. In challenging times, the research university, with all of its dark alleys and daring challenges, inspires action and illuminates a way forward for all of us. The suffering and uncertainty of the past year have almost been too great to bear, but there are still reasons for hope, even reasons to celebrate. Harvard and the University of Haifa, and the tireless pursuits that they inspire and enable, have never been more important to society than they are now. I hope you find joy in that truth, offered with esteem for your university community, now also my university community, and for its commitment to providing opportunities for all people to grow in both knowledge and wisdom. Your efforts to build a multiversity connected across campuses as well as fields and disciplines will create incredible opportunities for Israel and for the world. Thank you again for giving me the gift of membership in another one of the world's great academic communities, a wonderful community of learning. I hope to have the chance to express my gratitude to all of you before too long in person. But until then, please know that you have my sincere thanks for this very, very great honor. Thank you very much. Toda Rabah.